Thank you.
Good morning. The first thing I would like to do is thank the Nuqat team for hosting an incredible event. Without the organisation and the friends of Nuqat pulling things like this together, there would be no coming together of ideas from different parts of the world. So a big round of applause, please, for the Nuqat team. Thank you very much. With events unfolding in Lebanon as well as Paris, I would like to say that the creative economies change futures. We are the people who are coming together to enable other people to develop futures and a living and a way forward. Incredibly important that people carry on developing and learning from one another. We change, we create the growth. Okay, thank you. So today I'm going to talk about, thank you. Today I'm going to talk about fashion education within a developing sector. For anybody not interested in fashion, just think of the word product. We're all here to learn about sort of growth and creating products and ways forward. So just forget the word fashion, okay, and we'll get going. So that's me. And I'm incredibly lucky to work at the Lebanese American University in conjunction with University of the Arts London and Eli Saab. And the program is a new program. We've been in our building for just over a year, and the students are all kind of like moving forward in a wide variety of ways which perhaps have not been expected or seen within this part of the world. I prefer the word yes to the word no, so I like everything to be a yes. If it's a no, then I'm moving on from that, and I just like the positivity of the word yes, the meaning of it, and the fact that it has so many connotations for the future. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the work from the first semester intake, and the idea of fashion education is that people are coming in and they're somehow using a little doll figure and they're dressing that doll to get very predictable outcomes. But Lebanon is an incredible centre for evening wear and haute couture, and my role when I accepted the job was to bring a whole new way of thinking, including kind of menswear, experimental textiles, concept-driven, narrative-driven outcomes. And everything the students are doing is all about energy, and it's incredibly important that I may not understand something as an academic, but that I'm kind of engaging with a what happens if approach. So a student can create anything, and that is actually who they are, rather than this idea of creation within a kind of like very defined network of kind of like rules and regulations. So this is a student from 6 weeks into the program. All the students do a 1-year common foundation before they come onto the fashion program. And I have to say, I've no idea what this means, how we would make it, what the textiles are. And I'm not worried about that because my role as an educator is to open up a process of experimentation and to find out all about kind of what Lebanon can be in a global marketplace other than evening wear and the usual outcomes. And within every student's kind of education, I like to think of a tipping point, which is where something, a tiny intervention happens within their work, whereby their whole future, their whole life has been changed by a little tiny sort of intervention. It could be a little drawing at the back of a notebook, because we as creators all try to draw in a certain expected way. However, there are kind of like all the ways that are hidden and unseen, which is the way that I like to work. So I'm always looking at the back of a student's sketchbook, And for the student we've just seen, Tracy, it was a 2-day workshop where she was completely lost about her kind of who she is as a designer. But it's actually kind of like monoprinting, coming up with little ideas where suddenly everything came into focus for her. Other work from a 2-day workshop. And this student then is a Lebanese student who is looking at kind of the cold northern European countries and is looking at kind of workhouses and kind of mental institutions and the idea of kind of like this weird sort of dream. So incredibly different from the normal expected kind of evening wear and glamour and models tripping down the catwalk. So for those who don't work in fashion, I've got one thing to say about it. It's incredibly hard work, and people tend to think of a sketch and then the final process of seeing things on the catwalk. Everything in between is architecture for the body and an intellectual process. And this is the expectation. I expect my students to then have an incredible amount of work. There's no shui on my program, so students are constantly coming in. They're there from 8 in the morning because of lessons, and when I leave at 8 at night, they're being kicked out. So there is this incredible vision that they can make a difference within their country and region. And for me then, the work is like being at Central St. Martin's or the Royal College. This is 6 weeks into a program where the student knows nothing about fashion, and I've completely destroyed the idea of evening wear and glamour and bridal, which I acknowledge is incredibly important for the region. However, nobody here is wearing evening wear or bridal, and there is that whole kind of sector in between where we need to wear clothes, and there needs to be a design process. And experimentation on the mannequin. I've no idea what this means or how we would make it work, but it's an experimental process to generate ideas from it with a non-traditional route. And my famous question, what happens if we make it bigger, we make it smaller, we burn it? What happens if it is a product for a non-fashion outcome? What happens if we leave it in the street, we rip it apart, we completely change it, and we get outcomes that are incredibly different from the expected norm? This here is laminated fabric, so it's melted. It's got kind of plastic beads that have been melted into the fabric. And this is a very non-traditional way of working, looking at 17th century portraiture and also kind of very quick sketching methods. And I expect students to be pushing the boundaries. I didn't give up my cozy life in the UK for students to kind of like come in and kind of like play around with mood boards. Everything is an extension of who they are. And who we are is an internal core from who we think we are. This then is Diala kind of like working on the 3D aspect, and this is just 5 or 6 weeks into a program, and it's all about the experimentation. And because the slide was incredibly dirty with all sorts of rubbish in the background, I have then brought who I am into the presentation. Oof, bit shui, come on. So every student I work with, I expect to have a unique process, and then within the actual program, there is no competition between students. They are all finding their own unique way forward, and then they're kind of like co-facilitating and creating an energy in the studios of enjoyment and hard work. So this is a student who is looking at then crystal meth, and is coming up with the idea of this really very ugly and unaccepted norm for what fashion could be. This is her idea of a dystopian world. I've no idea who the customer for this is at this time, but it's a really kind of very different from the expectations in the MENA region and the Middle East. Development lineup, and so here we're seeing the idea of a collection. As soon as you get rid of the weird heads, we're looking at garments that are commercial and will be beautifully made. Another student working with avant-garde, kind of like textiles, again, I've got no idea of the actual process, but when I say I've got no idea, I know as an internal core how to make it happen, but I am on a journey with my colleagues where every student is individual. We're not doing cookie-cutter fashion. So every student within the program has already, within a few weeks, developed an identity, a core belief of who they may be in the future. And those core beliefs come from the kind of things they love, their reference points. And this is very applicable to anybody who is designing product to make sure that you're finding your own way forward and not falling into the expectations of the norm. Experimental fabrics. And the kind of studios I expect, which is everybody having an incredible time, 2-day workshop over the weekend, I expect all of the students in working, as do all of my colleagues. And during the program, every project, students will develop a different facet of who they are. And the program covers everything from entrepreneurship, so that once they leave LAU and go into the wider world, they will be able to go on to a master's program and be as good as any student from the West. They'll be able to open a business, and they will be able to interact on a global platform. So my remit is, what is it like to be Lebanese or from the MENA region within a global platform where we move away from the idea of the usual reference points. And so when I work in somewhere like Hanoi, people look at traditional costume. And so if you go to India, you will see variations of the sari on the catwalk, but that isn't fashion. Fashion is a completely different intuitive process. So here we have an image from about 4 weeks into the program. And I'm really starting to break down the idea of the meaning of fashion. We're moving further and further away from the little doll figure into an intuitive scribble process. So one of the exercises I run is the idea of, if we are illustrating, then we use kind of emotional context to move away from the very tight to eel drawing styles that people already have because they think fashion is X or Y. And here the student is illustrating with the idea of anger and energy. So the program is then associated with Elise Saab, who is a global beacon of fabulousness within the region. And every student comes and wants to be like Elise Saab. And I say, as I do around the world, I tell them that that job is taken, okay, and there's no point in being second best. People are developing who they are, not who they would like to be. And so within the program, perhaps an unusual thing to find in the region is the idea of tailoring and structure instead of floaty things. And once students learn to actually kind of create three-dimensional structures, they can work in any kind of format. Then the idea of deconstructing garments to find out, A, about internal construction, but then to deconstruct, reconstruct, and break down the idea that a jacket has to have a certain set look. So this one I particularly liked, as the student just came in, Alia, and she just chopped and chopped and chopped and chopped, and I just completely fell in love with it, and as you can see, I'm wearing it. The idea that garments can become something completely different opens up the visual narrative and the way that they can then create in a completely new way. So one of the unexpected outcomes for me, even within a year, is that I've already got 7 or 8 incredible menswear designers, And those designers will be going on to work at Louis Vuitton, they will end up at Prada, they will end up at Gucci, they will end up working around the world because they've already had the preconceived ideas of what menswear or fashion is all about broken down, and they're creating incredible garments. So this is a menswear project from the tailoring, which is semester 3 from 0. And the student is looking at kind of like war and conflict, the recent rubbish situation in beautiful Beirut. And looking at her own family heritage from a German background. And then referencing kind of like women during kind of like periods of war. So women have moved out of home and hearth, and they're now kind of like working the land, examining women's roles within society, within a menswear context. So moving out of the binary idea of kind of women as kind of like a fairy tale princess, or the other extreme of kind of like pop star glamour, moving into very different realms of what design could be. This is a student, Karen, who will probably go to Savile Row in London for her internship. I just had a very nice message from her. And Karen then examined her own background. So she was looking at the Drews pants. She was also looking at kind of like hip hop in New York and the late Sabah, Lebanese pop icon. And so the actual sweatshirt at the top has 130 engineered pattern pieces within that, and that is project 2 from 0. And she's then taken the idea of the beautiful street graffiti, and she's worked with a graffiti artist to actually get kind of Lebanese identity on the back, but on a global platform, people would not necessarily pick up on that reference. Where I come from then talks cheap, so there's no point in me kind of like banging on about a theoretical process if there is not the actual kind of the craftsmanship and the heritage to kind of like create the dialogue and also create the garments at a very, very high level. So as a Royal College of Art menswear graduate who's taught around the world, I expect the very highest standards from my students. WIP. So WIP then refers to work in progress. Wherever I work in the world, I can never remember what we're supposed to call mid-semester kind of like reviews. And WIP is work in progress from the Royal College of Art, where there is a very intellectual academic process. So you can forget the idea that we are making kind of like fashion garments. We are making products to fit into a chain and a global economy worth billions. And the students need to realize that timeline and deadlines are essential to success. As with all of you who work in the creative industries, if you miss your deadline, then you are out of a job. Your reputation is sunk. I love the idea of to be. So rather than trying to do X or Y, be oneself. And it's a kind of a tenet that keeps popping up within my teaching practice around the world. There is no point trying to be Ellie Saab or Vivienne Westwood or whoever outside of oneself. The internal core is what makes the difference. And then other people look at that student too, who becomes a graduate, who becomes a really good designer. That is how people are looking at the great designers, because they have their internal core. They're not fighting and trying to be somebody else. Finally, examples of avant-garde textiles in my 55 seconds left. I've been having nightmares about that ticker. The idea of recycling, what happens if we use rubbish for weaving? Students going mad on kind of European embroidery techniques. So the program was created to make sure that those designers are able to link with industry to produce goods so that the entire fashion chain in beautiful Beirut and Lebanon can be kick-started. Incredibly important that the designers can go to ateliers and artisans and actually link with the community as well as kind of non-profit organizations. Finally, within the first semester of the program opening, we did a live project with Ben Simon Shoes, time's up. We did a live project where the work was deemed by the Ben Simon brothers as so good. They then wanted to do the exhibition which we had in Paris, promoting the incredible talents to be found in this region. Big message there, be happy. Shukran, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jason, very much.
Thank you.
I think I want to also thank you for sharing the design process that's full of intuitive experimentation and passion, because I think this is one, when we neglect that, we get more of the copy and paste. And as we were seeing from some of our talks and discussions yesterday, we've been neglecting that in the academic community, where the School of Architecture was pushed out of the wealthy engineering college of petroleum and engineering, and they don't have the resources to be able to have that process flourish, as also some of the other stories in the professional, in architecture, where you still don't have the resources to go through that process of experimentation. Because there is a lot of unknown, there is a lot of experimentation. I think it's very important that we honor that, give it its time, give it its space, and give it its resources in order to be able to produce original ideas and reduce this phenomena of cutting and pasting that has been made so easy with the internet and everything, you know. So I would like to just throw out the discussion if anybody has any questions.
Oof, there's always the fear that nobody's got a question.
Need the microphone, we've got a question.
Actually, as well as thanking Nuqat, I would like to thank Sarah Thelwall for recommending, thank you very much, and also my colleagues at LAU, Yasmin Nashabit An, especially for supporting the process of intuitive, a whole intuitive process of creating a program from zero and going with that. So you as designers, you must trust that internal core and just let go of things and try.
Thanks, Jason. I wonder whether you could give us a couple of the examples of the work with communities that you're doing in Beirut. I was thinking particularly of the Inash stuff and the stuff with the nuns, but pick any you like.
Yeah, so when I arrived in beautiful Beirut, I made contact with an organization in Ash for the development of the Palestinian people, and they specifically, I don't want to get into a political debate about X or Y. I'm an academic here to teach. I love that. My role is to make sure I'm crossing the boundaries with everybody. But in Ash, do incredible embroidery, which fits into my remit of textiles and design. So I'm working with them on developing a training program in one of the Palestinian camps, Ma Elias, and I'm also helping them find ways forward to make the embroidery, which is a little bit eel, into incredible design products without it losing its heritage, so that we're not trying too hard to reinvent the wheel. It's an incredible opportunity to be working with people I would never ordinarily work with.
With all what we saw and your way to teach the people, I'm surprised to see you dressed in the classic way. So why?
Why? That's a very good question, isn't it? Who I am and how I dress are two completely different things. And actually, it's interesting you should say that, because I'm hiding behind this rather hideous stripy blazer, because I'm just not this person. So I got off to a really ropey start, and now I could get into it. I could be Mr. Comedy, which is how I hide behind that persona. But when I teach, it's a very intuitive process, but my public persona is different from who I actually am. So yes, I am hiding behind this. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm also breathing in due to the amount of incredible dinners we've had and all the food. So yeah, I just want to
When we discuss the copy and paste syndrome, how much of what you do, what you create, design, is really some form of reinventing the wheel? When we look at fashion down the ages, down the centuries, and we see quite a bit of repetition of certain forms.
Yeah.
Designs.
I think that's a very interesting question. Everything is repetition because no student on my program is going to do a jacket with 3 sleeves. Okay, so there are certain conventions, but it's the actual intuitive process within that. And the program was kind of copy-paste from the best programs in the world, programs I taught on and worked on. Copy-paste is great if you've got somebody who understands the internal process within that copy-paste. So I understand what's happening, but if somebody else came in and it suddenly became about evening wear, then it would all completely, for me, fall apart. So it is copy-paste. Fashion is copy-paste. Because if Elie Saab did school uniforms, we would all be very confused by that. But because he always does a look we know, we're not frightened by it. So it stays within the actual branding of who he is and the message. So Yamamoto, always black and drapey or whatever, there is that particular thing, is copy-paste, but it's a reinvention within all the time. Without copy-paste, it wouldn't work.
Hi, my name is Huda, and I love your blazer.
Thank you very much. You can thank Vivian Westwood.
A question from your presentation. You had a what-if slide up there. What if we had a fashion academy here in Kuwait, as part of the Kuwait University program? Wouldn't that be wonderful? That's one about education. My question to you is, what are the admission policies of the program, the fashion program at LAU? Are they inclusive? Are they open to all sectors of society? Or is it for people who can afford to go into the program at the university? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, okay, I do the actual kind of teaching and facilitating end with a team of colleagues, but LAU is an incredibly open and diverse university. There are a lot of scholarships for those who may not necessarily be able to get onto a program, and they can get that scholarship any way they like. When they get into my studio, okay, they are under the thumb and the beat of design, okay, and I expect them. There is no shui shui. Yeah. It's the only expression apart from shukran. Yeah. There is no shui shui. So I don't care who comes in. They have the chance to be different and to redefine beautiful Beirut and Lebanon and the region, and for that to spread in a very good way. So we see negativity on the news, but nobody is banging on about the incredible work everybody here is doing. In answer to the fashion program here, I think that's a great idea. Okay, just make sure it's not evening wear and glamour.
Question? We have a mic up.
You sort of encourage them to be who they are?
Well, I don't encourage them. I just tell them that this is who I think you are. I've learned, actually, I haven't got time on a degree program to let them find out too much. I say, I think you are a menswear designer. I think you are avant-garde textiles. I think you are conceptual. And then they join the dots. It's either yes or no. I haven't got time.
So you see it right away. I was going to ask you if there are, what kind of exercises do you give students to
Yeah,
figure
a lot
out
of
who
exercises, everything. And for those doing the workshop, if anybody that's signed up, my colleague Sarah and I will be doing the intuitive processes to allow you to be any kind of designer and access that internal core. And that comes from scribble and making a mess. It doesn't come from the idea of being like somebody. But I haven't got time as an academic to let people find out, like puppies, that I just have to tell them I've learned. And then I let them find the way forward. Look, I'm taking other people's time. I feel, I just want to go. I want to go, so, yeah. Can I?
Great. Any other questions? Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You've been a wonderful audience. Thank you very much. Yeah. Wonderful to be in Kuwait, my first time. Thank you very much. We'll talk later. Yeah.
Thanks a lot.